to Rock, Paper, Shotgun. My name is Colin Mahern and I'm about to make a lot of you feel quite old. It's been over 10 years since Minecraft was released. Yes, a decade plus since we got hooked on surviving its deadly nights and sinister snickering foes. And during that time, there's been wave upon wave of great new survival games to scratch our deepest masochistic itches. Attempting to tackle them all would probably lead you to an early grave, so we've decided to help out by putting together this list of the very best survival games you can play on PC. We've kept our definition of survival fairly broad. I mean, after all, the genre has crept into several other types of games over the years, from RPGs and management games to horror and cosmic sandboxes. So you'll find plenty of hybrids in this list alongside pure survival classics. That said, in keeping with the spirit of the genre, we've also focused on games that we'd recommend you play today, as opposed to doggedly sticking with some of the genre's founding fathers. You know, survival of the fittest and all that. If at the end of this video you find that your fave didn't get a mention, then head to rockpapershotgun.com. There you'll be able to see our full list of the best survival games on PC. And the one you think is the best might be on there. If it's not, then tell us all about it in the comments section. Maybe you'll convince others, and us, to give it a go. There are loads of brilliant survival games to be found on PC, but let's get into the top 12 as selected by us, Rock, Paper, Shotgun. A zombie survival game that seems reluctant to leave early access, Project Zomboid is an isometric sandbox that drops you in a town and tasks you with simply not dying. Easier said than done when hundreds of zombies are waiting to munch on your delicious brain, of course. Project Zomboid's obsessively detailed simulation is top notch. Take vehicles for instance. They pretty much function like real cars. You can lock them, break into them, hotwire them, fiddle with the thermostat, muck around with the radio, strip them for parts. Everything is taken into account. This simulation extends to the natural world as well, so it takes into account precipitation levels, snowfall, temperature, and then the world reacts accordingly, physically changing and putting new demands on players. It's all tremendously ambitious, and the long development time makes more sense when you actually see what's been added through the years. Darkwood is so thick with dread that you almost have to wade through its forest. This top-down 2D horror limits your field of view and then fills the shadows with things from your very worst nightmares. You're never getting the full picture, and any number of bone-chilling creatures could be lurking just out of view. When the sun is up, you can go outside and explore, scavenging for resources, but when night falls, you've got to get back to the comparative safety of your cabin and prepare for all that nastiness. Board up the windows, move furniture around, set traps, and then wait. At first it's just noises, scratching at the walls, knocking, banging, but it won't stay that way. The forest is surreal and always changing, moving further and further away from reality, so you'll always feel like you're on the back foot. You can't trust the Darkwood, but that's why it's so good. While survival games like Darkwood pit you against a bleak, often zombie-ridden hellscape, Raft cast you out to sea. Trapped all alone, or with a bunch of friends if you play in co-op, it's just you and your pile of wooden planks with no land as far as the eye can see. Raft is a bit like the video game equivalent of the Life of Pi. Except instead of trying to stay alive with a hungry tiger as your marooned next door neighbour, it's the sharks you got to worry about in this early access survival sim. Those guys will chomp their way through practically anything they can fit into their toothy maws, including that rickety raft of yours. Fortunately, Raft isn't just about defending your newfound home from the terrors of the deep. While hunger and thirst levels must be perpetually topped up, Raft also lets you indulge your slightly sillier side, giving you the scope to craft multi-story palaces if you so wish, replete with shark head trophies and any other bits and bobs you can find floating in the ocean. And you'll find quite a lot. People are so messy. Years after it appeared on early access, we can still vividly remember our first encounter with the forest's tribe of mutant cannibals. We just finished building a shelter when we saw one of them standing motionless, staring at us. And then they vanished. We panicked, of course, and ran deeper into the forest. They silently dashed between trees, and it was impossible to tell how many of them there were. There could have been 2, 3, maybe a whole army of them. We were lost, frantic, and finally unconscious. When we woke up, we were in their larder surrounded by human meat. Not the most pleasant way to spend a Sunday afternoon, is it? The forest is a stressful, terrifying nightmare, and at night, it's even worse. That's when the cannibals get bolder. If you see their torches flickering in the distance, you'll know you need to find somewhere to hide. You're not entirely helpless though. You can surround your base with traps and fortifications, taunting the cannibals to try their luck. And some of them might, because whilst they are ferocious, they can be quite clever too and work together to take you down. They're not mindless monsters. They're part of a whole society that's determined to turn you into dinner. I think most had the same thought when they first saw Terraria. 2D Minecraft. I mean, there is plenty of mining and crafting, so they've got that in common. But Terraria pinches just as much from action games and RPGs, sending you below the surface of its randomly generated world to kill monsters and snatch loot. And because every dungeon worth its salt has a village full of people ready to help adventuring heroes, you can build one yourself. With shelter, NPC chums, and workstations, you'll be able to make increasingly more ambitious expeditions. Since it launched all the way back in 2011, Relogic have lavished Terraria with updates, so there are a bewildering number of magical weapons and handy tools you're able to craft, and plenty of monsters to test them against. The further into it you get, the more wild it becomes. It is full of surprises, and you never really know what you're going to find when you start chipping away at a cave wall with your pickaxe. Survival should be hard, but Astroneer is built on a wild new idea. What if it wasn't? The only thing you need to worry about is oxygen, but as long as your scientist is hooked up to a base or a vehicle, you have nothing to worry about. Instead, you can concentrate on studying gorgeous alien worlds and developing research posts. By jumping straight into advanced technology, you get to play around with rockets and construct factories, while in another survival game, you'd still be putting together your first log cabin. Before long, you'll be flitting off to new worlds and moons, searching for more resources and scientific curiosities. Even without the struggle, Astroneer has plenty of momentum. It's a lovely co-op game too, and that extra pair of hands means you can start working on more ambitious research and construction projects earlier. It's a rare beast, a survival game that will strengthen friendships rather than test them. Between this and Frostpunk, it's clear that 11-bit studios have a knack for creating bleak yet tense survival management games. This War of Mine is set during a fictional war, tasking you with looking after a small group of survivors stuck in a besieged city. During the day, survivors have to stay indoors, and that's when you manage your hideout, choosing how to spend precious, fleeting resources. When the sun goes down, you can choose a survivor to send out into the darkness to search for supplies in the ruined city. But terrible things happen out there. Your survivor might have to commit horrific acts to get the medicine and food their friends need, returning to the base covered in emotional scars. Guilt and shame can weigh on survivors, making them lose their appetite or even their will to live. This War of Mine doesn't glorify war or the ability to survive one. It tells harrowing stories and forces players to wrestle with the ethics of survival. Keeping your belly full is a persistent concern in Don't Starve, but running out of nutritious grub is far from the only threat facing any survivors unlucky enough to get trapped in this gothic wilderness. Killer bees, territorial pigmen, and giant one-eyed birds can all send you to an early grave, but other dangers are less tangible. Even your own mind can become an enemy, summoning shadowy hallucinations whose attacks are all too real. You've got to push through it all and venture out into the wilderness to hunt for resources to feed your science and alchemy machines. Then it becomes a race to get home before it gets dark. The world becomes a much more dangerous place after dark. The call of adventure is alluring, but every step you take away from the safety of your campfire or base puts you more at risk. So while you have to keep that tum-tum full, just be careful of how far you stray away from home, alright? There's more than a hint of Fallout in Neo Scavenger's Wasteland, especially if you survive long enough to see the story unfold. But where Fallout is a post-apocalyptic power fantasy, Neo Scavenger never passes up an opportunity to remind you of how vulnerable you are. This is a game where, ultimately, a little scratch can kill you. It is merciless, but only if you look at each abrupt life as a failure instead of what they really are, self-contained fables. Killing lots of mutants won't give you experience, and it won't suddenly give you a trait that makes you a more effective mutant murderer. Instead, through failure and success, you'll learn the best way of dealing with whatever crisis you come across. It's the best kind of permadeath. Starting again is exciting because it's a chance to test out a new character build, mixing and matching different abilities and flaws. Certain locations are fixed, but the map does get reconfigured when you start a new life, so at the very least, you won't be constantly repeating the same journeys and dying in the exact same spot. You can die in loads of different places. Joy of joys. RimWorld's stranded colonists have a lot to contend with. Wild animals, raider attacks, diseases, drug addiction, and even their fellow colonists. It's a harsh place, and keeping them alive takes a lot of work. In this elaborate simulation, surviving isn't just about keeping colonists well fed. If one of them gets into a big fight with their partner and ends up refusing to eat, it won't matter if you've got a freezer full of food. And what if that colonist is also the only doctor? Now, if someone gets badly injured, which is bound to happen, they might not be able to get the medical aid they so desperately require. Everything from stress to unseasonably hot weather can spell doom for your colony. Don't let that deter you though. There are so many wildly different paths to take when building your colony. We've built colonies inside mountains, nurtured villages of farmers, led a band of raiders and tried to get rich by starting a trading company. It's mind-bogglingly open, and even after pouring countless hours into it, we've only scratched the surface. Survival games don't come more alien than Subnautica, or less hospitable to human life. Stuck on an underwater planet, you must delve below the waves to find food and resources, eventually constructing your very own underwater bases and submersible vehicles. 3D movement and a lack of oxygen make even the mundane act of gathering bits of scrap a tense adventure. Danger can come from any direction, and if you stay underwater for too long, you'll get a nasty reminder that you're the alien on this world, dying as you gasp for air. Vehicles, air pumps and oxygen tanks allow you to stay under for longer, however, and the more familiar you become with the world, the more the ocean starts to become home. Massive forests of kelp, labyrinthine underwater caves, infinite voids that contain creatures the size of small islands. Every biome feels like its own little world. You're more Jacques Cousteau than Bear Grylls, cataloguing the denizens of the ocean and trying to unlock its mysteries. While there is constant pressure to eat, drink and obviously breathe, Subnautica is also an uncommonly relaxing survival game. Despite myriad threats lurking in the water, it's predominantly about the peaceful, thoughtful exploration of a stunning alien world. The Long Dark's vast, snow-blanketed wilderness is a harsh and uncompromising place. Its episodic story mode, Wintermute, serves as a gentle introduction to its harsh yet beautiful world, but it's the game's survival mode that's the true, open-ended test of your mettle, dropping you into a freezing world and then leaving you to find your own way. You've got to find shelter and then venture out to find supplies, all while trying to keep your calorie intake up and your body warm. You have to worry about your basic human needs and very little else, but that's actually a pretty big job. You've got to work out your diet, how far you can travel on a full stomach, exactly how much time you'll have before it gets dark and the temperature plummets, and then there are the contingency plans for things like blizzards. You're not just popping out to grab bread and milk from the corner shop. There are lots of fascinating interpretations of the survival genre in this list, but The Long Dark sticks to the fundamentals and works magic with them. Instead of filling A to B journeys with enemies, The Long Dark fills them with atmosphere. Hikes are fraught with tension as you keep an ear out for wolf howls and pray that the wind doesn't pick up. But occasionally, there is time to play tourist, which is nice. The map is a starkly beautiful slice of Canadian wilderness, so who could be blamed for taking a break from scavenging to snap a few shots? If you've got to this point in the video and you're wondering where your fave is, then check out RPS's full list of the best survival games to play on PC on rockpapershotgun.com. You might find that your favourite actually did make the cut. If it didn't, then why not leave a comment championing the survival game you love more than any other? We enjoy celebrating great games, so we'd be happy to hear about the survival game you hold dear. Thanks very much for watching, you absolute star, and remember, for all of your PC gaming needs, keep it on rockpapershotgun.com.